Awesome, guys. Well, great to see at least about 18 of you with us today. I wasn't sure what would happen because I certainly understand this little bit of time before break is always like one of those peaks in the year in terms of just student energy and issues going on. So it's great, those of you that were able to join us today. We will, of course, be recording. So if anybody needs to jump off, we totally understand that. Our topic today was supposed to be talking about like second semester schedule and staffing and elective courses. But, I just felt like I couldn't reach out to a lot of you and ask you to put something together because you had too much on your plate. So what we're going to do, Jeff Dykehouse is ready to share. He's got some great ideas. So we'll have Jeff kind of kick things off, but then just unplanned. I think all of us have kind of gotten to know each other in this little PLC that we formed. So if you want to just, unmute yourself and kind of share or add on to things Jeff is sharing, that would be great. Before we get into Jeff and of course, Bob Kefjan's update, I do have a document that I could really use your help with. I'm getting ready to send out an edition of In the Middle with You, our little newsletter. And I thought it would be neat to just put in like some holiday fun things that you're doing in your building. Obviously, this will be passed, but it will help people think about for next year. So if you would, Ryan's going to dump this link in the chat. And if you would just, put in your school name, your name, just a short description of your fun holiday activity that you do. And if you happen to have a picture that you could also put in there, that's always great. So if you have a minute during this time today that we're together to just multitask and do that as well, I would love to grab some information from you on that. So we are going to kick things off with Bob Kefjan. Obviously, there's been a lot of things going on in Lansing, in addition to obviously the tragedy in Oxford. And I know all of you still every single day, if you're like me, you think about what's going on there and you think about those administrators and the kids and the families and, how hard this holiday season is going to be for so many in that community. And, for those of you that are upstate, you probably aren't aware, they had threats this morning because the middle school and elementary were back in session and they had to close. But who could do that? Who could possibly do something that malicious, right? With this community that's already, kind of like on edge. So anyway, I just wanted you to know that if you were unaware, that's a pretty terrible situation. Hopefully you received an email from your MASSP region rep. We are collecting cards for the administrators. There's been a lot of collection of things in Oxford for the teachers and for the families, but I thought those administrators could probably really use some outreach directly from their principal colleagues, just saying, hey, thinking of you, my condolences to your school, whatever you want to say, offering support for them in any way. If you'll just mail those cards kind of in a manila envelope to the MASSP office, and then we're going to, send kind of obviously sort all those out that come in and send them to the Oxford administrators. I personally got them cards and I also got some Domino's gift cards. I just thought, I just wanted to do a little something for them extra. So if you have time to get that in the mail to us this week, we would love to be able to send them to the administrators before Christmas, maybe arrive around Christmas. We just thought that would be just a nice vote of support. So you just need to mail it to the MASSP office. There was an email sent to you from your region reps with the name of the principal and the 2 assistant principals. So if you want to write personal cards to each person, that would be fantastic. Any questions about any of those things? All right, Ryan did pop the link to the document that I asked you for your help with in the chat, if you can multitask. And we have none other than MASSP's Bob Kefjan with us in a shirt and tie, which tells me he is going to the Capitol today.
Last day of session before Christmas.
Are we getting grinched or what, sir?
We're so getting grinched. The question is just where we're getting grinched and how badly. No, it shouldn't be that bad today. They've only got a couple of cats and dogs to clean up before they leave on their winter break. So I've got a couple of things in here that are going to happen today, but for the most part, the biggest thing that they've got going on right now for this end of year season is they're trying to do budget supplementals, because as I'll cover in a second, there's still a lot of federal dollars out there left to spend. And so the legislature, just like a lot of school districts, are trying to figure out what to do with all those dollars. So as always, my contact information, Wendy's contact information, I'm sure you guys have this at this point, but don't hesitate to write it down. Cell phone is great. Go ahead and text me. No worries about that. Everybody else does. I'd much rather have you guys texting me than the crazies in the Capitol building. And I'm going to start on money because that's what's mostly going on downtown today, but also because there is some time sensitive input that schools need to make sure that they have taken care of. The plans, the LEA plans for ESSER 3, that is the most recent round of school-specific federal relief. Those plans are due December 15th, as in tomorrow. At this point, hopefully your district is well underway with this, has already turned in a plan or is processing a plan, and hopefully you guys have had input in that process, because under the federal rules, districts have to have engaged in meaningful consultation with stakeholders, including principals, in developing in their plans. You can see that tweet that we threw on there from Hamilton Schools. This was one of their versions of how to get community input, right? They did a community survey. I know Shauna and St. Charles, they did a staff survey, a full staff survey, compiled those results at the building level. These are great examples of how you can engage in meaningful consultation with stakeholders, give your principals and your teachers a chance to weigh in on what your district is doing. But know that this concept of meaningful documentation, and particularly, or meaningful consultation, particularly documented meaningful consultation, is going to be one of the big things that MDE is looking for in overseeing district plans. And as I said, that spending timeline, the big date coming up is in the lower right-hand corner, December 15th. That's tomorrow. Every district needs to have their application in, and a failure to do so, there will be no extensions, or there's no, like, take a pass on this one, I'll get to it later. You got to have something into the state by December 15th, or you forego your federal funding. Note that you don't have to spend it all right away. You have until 2024 to spend all the dollars. So lots and lots of time to spend it. You can spread the spending out, but you got to get that plan in. And we're talking about a whole lot of money. So if your district still hasn't done their plan, suddenly you talk to your superintendent today and it's, oh my God, we've got to get a plan in. Talk to your business official. There is an option on there to check a box to say that your plan is underway or in progress. I do not know the details about it. The Michigan school business officials do. I am fortunately not a Michigan school business official. So hopefully your business office will have some idea, but if you're being asked for input, just remember that most of the ESSER dollars are one-time dollars. That is, those are not dollars you want to spend on ongoing costs. Those are dollars you want to spend on one-time costs. So build the program, put in the new facilities or buy the computers, some sort of capital investment if you can, that will have an ongoing impact for a one-time cost. And I know that's always challenging in education. Most of the costs in education are people or people business, and that's how this plays out. But that's most of what we're dealing with for these ESSER dollars are one-time dollars. So keep that in mind as you're coming up with ideas. And every district, even if you have a very small Title 1A population, every district gets a bunch of money under this. So every district needs to make sure they have a plan. We were talking at the top about challenges that so many districts are facing. Oxford is clearly dealing with it again today with the threats that have closed their building. But all of you across the state, between the pandemic and the recent rash of threats and all of the usual stuff, it's not like it doesn't snow here in Michigan, are going to be facing building closures this year, potentially some pretty significant ones. And so wanted to just review where we stand with pupil accounting rules, because getting those days and hours in, especially as we go into second semester, is going to become, I expect, a challenge for some folks. Just a reminder of this MDE memo. And when you get these slides, all of these memos and documents, the source documents, are linked from the images, so you can pull all of this up. It's also on our website in an article I wrote. But this memo from MDE clarified that districts can use 21F, that is virtual learning, as a pivot for remote learning if you need to close the building. In other words, you still have to have your stuff in place, EDP for every student, parent permission, but you could pivot to virtual learning, asynchronous virtual learning, for a day or 2 days. You can plan ahead for those days. You cannot, so you could use these on state testing days. It's probably more of a thing at the high school level for the SAT and work keys days, but you can plan ahead on these, or you can use them in a reactionary way, as long as you fulfill the requirements of 21F. That is, you've got stuff in place, you got your paperwork in order, you've got your everything posted onto your, online somehow, and it's all available virtually. You can pivot to 21F. And remember that for two-way interactions, the only two-way interactions that are audited by your pupil accounting folks are those two-way interactions around pupil count day. We're in between count days right now. So while the law does require you to register one, to try to get one two-way interaction per student per week all year long, if you don't, there's no penalty. There's nothing tied to that. Nobody's looking at that. It's just a statutory requirement. So if you don't happen to get all your two-way interactions for a particular week, okay. Don't feel like you can't pivot to virtual learning just because you're worried about two-way interactions. Unless it's count day, that's probably not an obstacle. For the rest of this, a lot of the rules for most of the rules are back to what they were pre-pandemic. So virtual learning, you still got to do the 21F stuff. You got 180 days and 1,098 hours. Nobody's waived those this year. You still only get 6 forgiven days with an additional 3 at MDE's discretion. So you need to be thinking about ways to fit in days and hours. Note though, that if you come up short of the 75% attendance threshold, you can still count the day. You may lose a little bit of money on it. What you lose is whatever the percentage below 75 is that you are. So let's say you had 74% attendance. You take whatever your daily state aid rate is, divided by 75, and you lose at 74%, 1/75 of whatever that is. So for a lot of districts, this is a little bit of cash, but it's not the end of the world kind of cash. And it might be worth holding school, even if you're going to be below 75% attendance, so that you can get the days and hours, so that you're not going to school at the end of June or the beginning of July. So keep that in mind as you're going forward and you're looking at potential snow days or other things. Coming up short of attendance does not mean that you can't count the day.
And we've heard that as a pretty common misconception, the idea that if you don't have 75%, you don't get anything. So that might just be a good point of clarification to make with central office if you're ever having these discussions. Another thing, Bob, if you could just kind of briefly talk about something that we hear is that people are kind of thinking about their snow days as universal, like almost like you would a personal day where you can use it for anything. And that's not the case. So if you're just like, man, everybody needs a mental health day, we didn't use all our snow days this year, so we're going to use them on this coming Friday. You can't do that. So maybe Bob can talk a little more about that.
Yep. The rule is circumstances outside the control of the school district. So it has to be canceling school due to circumstances outside the control of the school district. Snow days, clearly outside the control of the school district. You come up short on staff because everybody's quarantining. Okay, outside the control of the school district. You planned ahead and you've canceled next Friday because you know it's just a day that everybody wants off or could even need off. Still not circumstances outside the control of the school district. So it's got to be something that you're using reactionarily, that you're not planning ahead on, that you're using because for whatever reason that you can't control, you got to close school that day.
I can kind of see most people use most of their snow days. This is Michigan, right? But if you had a couple of snow days left, I could see teachers unions being like, hey, we didn't use all our snow days. We could really use a mental health day on, this day coming up. I could see that type of thing happening, or that discussion. So just something I want you to be aware of, for your planning purposes. And also to know that if you were to just take a day for a mental health day, you could be called out on that and have to make it up. The other thing I did want to add is Bob and I have been meeting with MDE about the pupil accounting issues, because we just understand that people are going to be taking beyond their days more likely this year. And I think we're hoping to get a work group, but it sounds to me like a lot of the stuff that we're going to be talking to them might be impactful for next year, because unfortunately, I don't see things getting better next year. Pandemic or no pandemic, I think we're still going to continue to have staffing shortages. We're going to continue to not have subs available, and those types of issues. So to me, I think we're going to need to find some gives. And just for your planning purposes, if you're already starting to talk about next school year in your district, I think you should start thinking about getting permission from parents for 21F provisions. Just blanket, so that next year you have a lot more flexibility if you want to have a remote learning day.
So two things. One, I just threw in the chat. The statute is what I have highlighted here on my screen. And I threw it in the chat so you guys have the exact language. Because of conditions not within the control of school authorities, such as severe storms, fires, epidemics, utility power unavailability, water or sewer failure, or health conditions as defined by the city, county, or state health authorities. So they give some pretty specific examples, right? I think while it's not on this list, staff shortages, yeah, totally got something you don't have control over, but this is the limit of what you can use those 6 forgiven days on. And the statutory reference, should you need it, is MCL 388-1701 subsection 4. So sorry, the other thing Wendy talked about was parent permission. Understand that what the statute requires is actually parent consent. And it just says consent, and you can get consent a lot of different ways, right? You can get a web form that somebody puts an e-signature on. If you really need it, you could call them on the phone and say, hey, we need your permission to have your student enrolled. And as long as you document that and log it, good, go for it. It doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be a 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper with a handwritten signature. It can be kind of any form of consent, as long as, to my mind, as long as it's documented. The other thing, as Wendy mentioned, is we are working with MDE on some options here for remote learning. And so we've thrown a couple of examples at them. What if you wanted to do what Southfield is already doing and go a day a week remote and use the virtual learning rules? Yep, you can do that. Same thing, like I said, if you want to just do occasional remote learning, a day here or there, whether in reaction to a severe weather circumstance or whatever else, that is an option. So just know that those are out there. We're going to be doing an article on these, or rather we're hoping MDE will do an article on them that we write for them.
And also that MDE does a webinar, because one of the things that we know is when it comes to pupil accounting, it's one thing to just like read an explanation, and then it's another thing to be able to ask questions and kind of understand the nuances around it.
One thing on MMC I'm going to mention briefly, and I know middle school MMC tends to start at the high school level, but so many requirements are getting pushed down to the middle level. I did want to mention financial literacy, because there are bills coming, particularly 5190 has moved out of the House and into the Senate. It would require a half credit of personal finance in order to graduate, and it would lower the world language credit to 1.5 credits. I could very easily see districts wanting to find a way to fit in that half credit of personal finance before the high school level, because if you're thinking about this from a CTE student or a college-bound student lens, they're either taking 2 full credits of world language or more to get into college, or they've already ditched the 2nd credit of world language to go take CTE somewhere. So what this really does for those students is add a new half credit requirement. And I can see folks wanting to try and finagle this in at the middle level to make room at the high school level. So just noting it for you. who can teach a financial literacy class depends on the lens. So if you're making it a math class, you need a math teacher. If you're making it a family and consumer science class, you need a family and consumer science teacher. You'll have to think about how you're structuring the course. So sub-teacher bills, I did want to highlight these today because they did pass the Senate Education Committee this morning. They may or may not be on the House and Senate floors later today, but House Bill 42, 93, and 94 would eliminate the 60 credit requirement for substitute teachers if the person is an employee of the district. That is, you could take a bus driver who has 0 credit hours and put them in a classroom as a substitute teacher. The person can decline the placement if they are not happy with it, but you can still, it's not something that the state is going to disallow. This would only be for the current school year. And it would, the bills originally made sub-teacher placement a prohibited subject of bargaining. Matthew, is that a current employee or could we hire them? The bill is unspecific. That's one of the concerns that was raised during committee is, could you hire somebody, in the morning and put them in a classroom immediately? Potentially. It just says a district employee. It doesn't say how long they've been a district employee. They could be a district employee for 3 minutes. I don't think you can contract them through a third party, but I think they have to be a direct hire. But other than that, we don't really know the scope of this yet. But regardless, whether the prohibited subject bill has gotten stripped out of this, but the other one with the 60 credit requirement is going to pass. It'll pass both chambers, and the gov is likely to sign it. So don't know exactly when, probably not before Christmas, but expect that this is coming at least by second semester.
So I did want you to know that MASSP did oppose this legislation, whereas a lot of the other associations supported it. And I just wanted to explain a little bit as to our rationale as to why. One of my concerns is I understand that we need substitutes in the classroom, and especially at the elementary level, it might be that a parapro could monitor the classroom, or even at the high school level. If the teacher provided work for the students asynchronously, and the students were basically in a room like a study hall, and there was a para in there that could supervise them. Our concern is just, we don't really like the idea of calling that person a substitute teacher. We would like to call that person a classroom monitor. And we asked for the provision that there be basically an acknowledgement that that person is a classroom monitor, and that there were limits on how long that person could be in the room. Think about it, if you put your parent hat on, how would you feel if you had somebody that was, a high school graduate, could not advance the curriculum in a classroom for 2 to 3 weeks? And if there's no provision that that can't happen, I can absolutely guarantee you that it will happen in some places in the state. So those were some of our concerns. And unfortunately, nobody really wanted to hear it. I think that there's just such an outpouring of need for subs, which 100% we understand. And we tried to work with the bill sponsor to try to get that nuanced, because we know that, even if you personally at the building level aren't keen on having that type of person in your classroom, and you're the person that's going to take the angry phone calls from parents, it could be done, So anyway, that's just kind of our background on it. I don't know if any of you have any thoughts or questions about that.
Just one note, Wendy mentioned 2 to 3 weeks. Note that a sub-teacher permit is good for 90 days, so 2 to 3 months. And you can get a 90-day extension, which we're talking then potentially 6 months.
So with your parent hat on, just imagine if you had a first grader or a second grader, and you had basically somebody that was a parapro or a crossing guard or a cafeteria worker that was in your child's classroom for 90 days as the teacher. Anything else that you were going to cover today, Bob?
Let me look. No, don't need that. That isn't happening right now. The vaccine mandate thing that everybody heard about, it's on hold pending a federal court case, so don't worry about it right now. No. EdCon's coming back. Yay. That's it.
All right, fantastic. I didn't see any questions in the chat for you, Bob. We appreciate you making the time to be with us today.
Sure.
So we are going to start thinking about second semester and potentially next school year. And Jeff Dykehouse, the principal at East Grand Rapids Middle School, is going to share his screen with us and talk about some interesting changes that they made in terms of schedule and electives. So thanks for sharing with us this morning, Jeff.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I know, as mentioned earlier, this is a really busy time, but I hope that a few minutes talking about something a little bit more positive as a respite for everyone and a chance to talk about something, right, that isn't about schools closing and COVID. So I'm going to share a little bit about what we're doing here in East Grand Rapids. But I also want to say, right, I fully understand that every district is different, and right, your geography sometimes plays into things, the size of your school, the size of your staff. There are so many components that we know goes into scheduling, and each of us have our own puzzle that we try to build every year to create students and using our staffing. So I just want to share some things that we're doing here in East in hopes that it just may open up your thinking as you're looking forward to next year and future years and what you can do with your schedule. And so what I'll start with in East Grand Rapids, we made a change a couple of years ago in order to, our whole goal was to increase opportunities for our kids. All right, so we know that at the middle school level, students, right, they haven't fully developed. They don't know what they want to do with their lives. They don't know what they want to study. They don't know so much about themselves that our goal was just to increase their opportunities, to increase their exposure to different courses, to different thinking, so that as they go through middle school, we're going to help them on that path to discover themselves, to start making those plans for their high school path, and then that path beyond high school. And so you'll see here that we made some changes, and I would just want you to know that that's kind of the thinking behind it, is increasing that exposure and opportunities for our kids. One thing that we're very fortunate to be able to do here in East Grand Rapids is to share our staff. Now, again, geography plays into this. So I'm fortunate that if I look out my window, I can see the high school. It's literally directly across the street. East Grand Rapids, if you're not familiar with the west side of the state, we are a very small school district. Our entire district is about 3 square miles. And right, all 5 of our school buildings are in that small geography. We have students that walk across the street to the high school for classes. We have staff that walk across the street to teach in both buildings. But that's one way that we are able to be creative with our schedule, is that I've got 8 staff members that teach both in this building and at the high school. I've got 1 staff member that teaches in this building and also at the elementary school. And that just opened up some opportunities for us, bringing in teachers that have expertise areas that they can offer different electives or courses. They may be full-time typically at the high school, but they're coming here for 1 class. I've got a teacher that comes here just to teach our yearbook course because she has a passion and she has an expertise in that area. Otherwise, she's a Latin teacher across the street at the high school. I've got a reading teacher from the elementary school that comes here for 3 hours a day, and she is our Title I reading teacher. And she provides direct instruction and intervention for our students that are below grade level at reading. And so I encourage you to, as you're having staffing conversations, to connect with other principals and other buildings and just talk about creative ways that you may be able to share staff going, between buildings. That conversation earlier about snow days, don't say that too loud around East Grand Rapids because we don't get very many of those. We're actually a district that doesn't have any busing. And so when you don't have busing, a lot of times we know that that's a reason for snow days, is right, concern about that transportation. And when I think 75% of our kids walk or ride their bike to school, sometimes even when the roads are covered in snow, we still get to come to school here in East because that small geography. So don't say snow days too loud around our kids and teachers because they're always wishing for more. So here's some of the changes that we made for our schedules. We are the only building in our district that actually works under trimesters. All of the other buildings, the high school, all of our elementaries are on semesters. But about 4 years ago, we changed to trimesters. And again, the whole goal was that our kids get to take additional electives because there's now 3 periods a year that they get to have a course change, right? Or new courses. So we switched to that trimester option. The other thing that we did, and this is where things really start to get confusing, is that we have alternating electives. So we call it day 1 and day 2. But essentially, if you think of our schedule, right, students have 6 hours. 4 of those, of course, are your core academic areas, and then 2 hours of electives. But we do an every other day schedule. So students actually get 4 electives every trimester. So on a day 1, they're going to have 2 electives, and on a day 2, they go to their other 2 electives, and then the next day they go back. And again, the whole idea is that increasing exposure. So they may not go as deep into one area, but they're going to have more exposure to different courses. So they're going to take art class every other day, PE class every other day. And so some of those things are ways that we increase the number of electives and opportunities for our kids. So in the next couple of slides, I just threw together what are some of those different electives that we offer, just so you can see, some of the outside the box thinking that our staff has brought to the table. Of course, we have the normal electives of art and PE and Spanish that most middle schools offer. But you'll see as we get to 7th and 8th grade, we've really increased some of those different elective options. So 6th grade is pretty standard. All of our students have to take music class. We have band, choir, and orchestra, and that's a requirement. All students have to take music, again, as an every other day class. All students take PE every other day. And about 98% of our kids take Spanish. Most of our students will take Spanish all 3 years because that's helpful. Going back to what Bob was saying earlier about those world language credits and high school level and checking some of those boxes. So about 98% of our kids will take Spanish every year in middle school.
Hey,
and then
Jeff,
you'll see, yeah.
could I ask if you had to throw in that financial literacy elective, where do you think you would put that?
I think so. I would imagine we would look at probably the 8th grade level, because
Okay.
as you look at 6th grade is most of our kids are pretty standard here, where 3 of their 4 electives are at the top of the screen. So music, PE, and Spanish. And then what happens, the 4th elective, 1 trimester, a student will have art. 1 trimester, a student will have innovation lab, which is like a STEM class where they're doing coding and 3D printing and some of those things. And then the 3rd trimester, students actually get to, in January, they will actually pick whether they want to take a 2nd art class or a 2nd innovation lab. And that's another unique thing that we do is we have not built the 3rd trimester schedule for our 6th graders yet. It gives me some nightmares sometimes to think I don't have the schedule done for 3rd trimester in the middle of the year, but our 6th graders will get to pick if they want to do a 2nd art class or a 2nd innovation lab. And again, the idea is they've tried both of them once. What are they interested in? What are they going to get excited about in the 3rd trimester? So they actually get to vote and pick which elective they want to do. And so that's a unique aspect. But here in 6th grade, that's that pretty much fills up the schedule between music, PE, Spanish, and then that art innovation lab back and forth.
Hey, Jeff, what's the certification for the person in the innovation lab?
So we've got, I've got mostly math teachers and then 1 science teacher. So we have, it either has to be science or math. And then 2 of the 3 teachers are actually certified in both science and math. And then the 3rd one is a math teacher that teaches that course. And that's, you'll see in a moment here that we take that class and go even deeper in this 7th and 8th grade level. So again,
Awesome.
6th grade, here's some.
I think at some point, maybe at a future thing, or maybe we could have you write an article or talk about it, but I think people would be interested in knowing what that curriculum looks like. Is that homegrown?
Yeah, it is. Yep. The teachers in that course have developed that on their own and continue to refine. And the one thing I'd say is it is a very expensive class to run. We've been fortunate with our PTO. They've donated. We have 4 3D printers in the room, but the filament every year is expensive. The Ozabots and it's an expensive course to run, but well worth it in, kids' interest levels today. And, obviously the skills that we're trying to build for our kids for their futures.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. So 7th grade, you'll see the electives open up. Music is no longer required in 7th grade. Again, it was required in 6th grade. 7th grade, we encourage, but some of our students will drop that music class. All of our students, of course, have the mandated health class that all students take. So we have the 1 trimester of health. Now in art class, we actually have 6 different art classes. So in 6th grade, again, students get a little bit of sculpture, a little bit of drawing, right? They learn all the different art techniques. In 7th grade, they can pick, I want to take just a sculpture class, or I love drawing, so I'm going to take just a drawing class, or digital art where they're drawing on iPads. So again, now we're trying to hone in on what students really engage with, what their passion areas are, and give them that outlet that they can really dive into that. But again, as trimester classes, this is small chunks because they actually only go to each class 30 times, right? Because a trimester is 60 days, but an every other day elective is only 30 days. So they go to each of these only 30 times. Innovation Lab, as I said, now we go deeper. So there's a specific robotics class. There's a specific engineering class. There's a coding and video game development class where kids are right now, again, honing in on that very specific thing that they want to learn about. We offer some English electives. So drama, right? Having our kids just up in those theater kids having a place. Journalism is a class that students take in 7th grade to prepare to be in our yearbook class in the 8th grade. If they want to be a writer for our yearbook, they can take the journalism in 7th grade to build some of those journalism skills. Reading, writing workshop is just a great place for our kids that are looking for an outlet, right? More time to read, more time to connect with an English teacher. And then a media production class is a new course for us. And those students are learning how to do things like how to do a vlog, they're going to be building towards, again, an 8th grade class, which we call broadcasting, which is our weekly announcements. So again, they start learning some of those skills about making media productions. And then 8th grade, they're going to really put that into practice by being in our broadcasting class and creating our weekly video newsletter, which is a really, really popular thing in our school.
Geez, Jeff, this is like seriously amazing. I don't know if, of course, we had no options when I was a kid, but if I had all those choices, I have no idea what I would pick because, I mean, it just seems like so many great ideas here. When you look at these electives, you know, did these kind of grow based on staff interest or based on getting feedback from kids and what they'd like?
So a little bit of both. One of our classes that we used to offer, just to give you an idea, we used to offer a chess class. And that was because we had one staff member that was like a guru of chess. And it was a popular class because that teacher was so passionate about chess and teaching chess. And, you know, when that teacher retired, that class disappeared. And we had it in our course offering guide for a few more years after he retired. And we got a little bit of interest, but never enough to offer the course, never a teacher that was out there drumming up support, talking about it in classes, you know, encouraging kids to sign up for it. And so it naturally just, it went away. And then some of these are, you know, based on students. So that media production class is a brand new course for us. And that's based on student input and saying, we want to go deeper with the iVideo that they're learning in that program and be able to learn that better. So the teacher's like, let's add another class in the 7th grade level to build it into kind of a 2-year window that our kids can learn those.
That's awesome. How many kids are in your school, Jeff?
So we are 637 students in our school this year.
Okay, awesome. I
So
think that helps people think about like, you know, size of the building when they're thinking about how many electives you can offer.
Yep, we've got about 40 staff members that work in the building, 637 kids. So similar idea, but this is our 8th grade elective list. Again, Spanish and music, now PE. We really differentiate in PE. So we offer an aquatics class. If kids want to do swimming, there's a weightlifting class, a net games, a yoga class, which we've got about 80 8th graders signed up for yoga, which is really cool to see. Our kids getting some mindfulness and doing some yoga. Again, art and innovation lab, different classes. That broadcasting is our weekly announcements that they put on a video, about an 8-minute video every week on the announcements for the school. We have a culture travel food class, which is taught by a social studies teacher. And he teaches, typically he'll go through about 3 different cultures around the world. So for instance, he'll do a study on Cuba, a study on Vietnam, and but then they don't just study that part of the world. He actually teaches them like how to make sushi, and then they make sushi in class. And he teaches them how to do different things, just learning about the culture and the food in different places. So really a deep dive into that. Outdoor appreciation is super popular for our kids. They are teaching kids geocaching. They teach them how to fish. We're fortunate in our location. We're right on Reed's Lake. So they actually, here in a couple of weeks, they'll go out and do ice fishing on the lake for that class. They teach nature skills, survival skills, how to build a campfire. And then some days they just go sledding because they're middle school kids and it's a great snowfall and they'll bring in their sleds and go sledding for an hour because they're kids. So again, just teaching kids to get off your tablets and get outdoors and enjoy, which is super popular. Film as literature is an English elective that, again, kids will read a book and then they'll watch the movie and they'll do they'll do a deep dive into all of the different components of setting and character development in the book versus character development in the movie. And then of course, we do offer yearbook as an 8th grade class as those kids build our yearbook for the year. So
for these 8th grade elective options, how many electives do they get?
So they get 12, but if you think about it, like Spanish is all year long. So Spanish is going to be 3 of your 12.
I see. Okay. Wow. This is great. I love it.
And then we do on the side just offer support classes, of course, as some of our students do need additional interventions. So we offer study skills where we're teaching, right, test taking strategies and note taking strategies. I mentioned earlier, we have a Title I reading class, which is direct intervention for students that are below grade level in reading. SDI stands for specially designed instruction, which is what we call our classes for our students that have IEPs. So that's a very specific class that's focused on students' goals, their IEP goals, and that teacher is working with those students very specifically on those IEP goals and growth towards those goals. And math mindset is a 6th grade class only, but it's an extra hour of math during the day where a teacher can reteach or pre-teach the math lesson. So we've got those classes. All of these classes are 10 students or less in each class. Most of them are in the 6 to 7 range per class so that we can provide very specific, focused, targeted intervention for kids that need that highest level, right, of that support.
So Jeff, I'm curious about your bell schedule. How many hours in the day are you going? Did you already show that?
Yep. So here's a schedule, 6 hours of the day. They're roughly 59 minutes each. Our classes, our students each have the 30-minute lunch, different hours of the day by grade level.
So when you are like thinking about your teacher schedules, do you have kind of, I used to, of course, high school scheduling is a different beast, I understand, but I used to like not allow any teacher to teach, like, especially in the major departments, English, social studies, math, science. Like I didn't allow anybody to have an all elective schedule. I didn't allow anybody to have all the upper level classes, so I had this kind of formula that was kind of what I called a balanced schedule for every teacher, because I thought it was really important. One of the reasons for that was in the social studies department, particularly, we had a longtime teacher who basically taught almost all the electives. And when she retired, nobody else had ever taught any of those classes. And it was like just a catastrophe, so that was one of the reasons. But what does that look like for your staff?
So there's a couple of things that we do. First off, we actually have all of our electives during the same hours. So what I mean is first and second hour, all 8th graders have electives. So we offer only 8th grade electives during first and second hour. And then 8th grade core classes are the rest of the day, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7th grade has their electives during 3rd and 4th hour, all 7th graders. And then 6th graders have their electives during 5th and 6th hour. All of our teachers, kind of like you're talking about, Wendy, other than your specialist, right? Of course, our music teachers teach music all day. We have one art teacher in the building. She teaches art all day. But most of those electives that you saw are taught by our core level teachers, right? So I've got, again, Innovation Lab. It's a math teacher that has 3 hours a day of math and 2 hours of Innovation Lab. That outdoor appreciation class is a social studies teacher that has 4 hours a day of social studies, 1 hour of outdoor appreciation, or 4 hours of English, 1 hour of drama, or those on the side. So you're right, trying to balance those out so that you've got, and again, I like the idea that our core teachers are out there, right, talking about these electives and building up that excitement about the electives and saying, hey, you're doing so great in English class. I would love for you to sign up for reading and writing workshop, for you to have a chance to go deeper. Like, here's a chance to have another hour of the day that you can just have devoted to reading and talking about books, which works really well.
That's awesome. Jeff, I mean, I'm serious. I don't know how everyone else feels, but I think this is a really interesting and helpful presentation. I'd love for you to repeat this at EdCon this summer, but go into a little more depth about what these various classes look like, and maybe even just, have links to the curriculum or something, because I think that would be really helpful to people.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope this is just a sneak peek into some of the things that our staff is doing here, but would love to share further. My contact information is out there. Please, in the short term, anyone feel free to reach out with questions or things that you're wondering about how we run things here.
Awesome.
I have a quick question, if it's possible.
Sure, Cheryl.
Okay, so this is my first year at middle school, my 34th year in education. But anyways, I'm really excited about scheduling, so I would love to soak up everybody's idea. One of the things with, how the kids are, especially after the pandemic, that social emotional piece has been something that we're really working on here. And we do Positivity Project. Of course, first year here, principal, I'm launching that. And I do it through my media productions, is like my broadcasting class that he has over there. But I'm hearing they want Eagle Time back. And I'm just wondering people's opinions about setting aside some seminar time or some time to have more of a homeroom issue, kind of things like that, and people's suggestions of that.
That's great, Cheryl. I hear a lot of people talking about that. So does anyone have a seminar class? Anyone?
So we have something that's similar to a seminar. It's an extra help we've had for a number of years. It's 30 minutes. We've got a lot going on in those 30 minutes now, almost to our detriment now, with all the different things we're trying to pull off with intervention and SEL and callbacks to teachers to reteach and everything else. But yes, we use that 30 minutes. That 30 minutes is really valuable time. I will say this, what I hear most from students is they love that 30 minutes, especially maybe our top end students. They love that 30 minutes to get a head start and try to get some homework done. Like they will, like anytime we put something in there and take away a day that they were supposed to get to be like working on stuff, I will get 2 to 3 emails from students that say, hey, I was really counting on that 30 minutes today to do this, this, or that. So I do think it is valuable time for our kids, just trying to figure out how the best way to support them in that. They have that ability at our high schools as well in Portage to have a seminar class. And so they build on this as they go up to high school.
So that is Jason from Portage West Middle School, and he's our president-elect at MASSP. And so if anyone has questions about what that schedule looks like, I know Jason wouldn't mind at all if you emailed him. So Jason, if you want to just pop your email in the chat, that would be helpful. Also, our friend Jennifer Pintek, who's on from Clausen, she dropped in the chat that they do 25 minutes every Wednesday with mixed grades, and that they have an SEL curriculum they follow along with additional school needs and things that they cover. Her microphone's not working. So if you want to contact Jennifer, I'm sure she would talk to you as well. Anybody want to share maybe an interesting or different elective that you're offering at the middle school, whether it's this year or something you're planning for next year, just to maybe give people some ideas? Feel free to unmute.
I'm Kristen Graham from Makatawa Bay in Holland.
Hi, Kristen.
We've been really pleased with our Project Lead the Way curriculum. So we've implemented that both 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and it builds on each other. So our 6th graders is a 9-week elective do app creator, where they're doing a lot of block coding. 7th grade, we do robotics, and then in 8th grade, we do design and modeling. It's can be a little bit of a financial lift, but we found it to be really worth it. Our teachers are trained in that curriculum over the summer. So much positive feedback has come back to us that we're actually adding a second 9-week class, kind of implementing that for staff as well. So, and it is a tech-based class, so really any of those teachers can teach it as well. So like Wendy said, we try to take teachers that find real joy in teaching something other than a core, and it kind of diversifies our implementation of staff.
That's awesome. So is there a lot of staff training involved in that, Kristen?
There can be kind of depending. I know the high school classes like engineering design are like a 2-week training for teachers. Some of the middle school ones, they're called gateway classes, are they can be 3 to 5 days. So typically it's done out of like EMU in YPC, and those have been really intense, but really positive as well for teachers. They feel like they're really well prepared to teach the class.
Awesome. Well, that would be another great EdCon breakout session. I know that Project Lead the Way has been around for a while, but I personally always think of it more of a high school thing. I didn't realize that there was middle school implementation. So that would be something that I think people learn about as well.
Yeah.
Hey, Haley, don't mean to put you on the spot here, but I know that you're a Leader in Me building. Do you have any built-in time for Leader in Me? Is that daily or just a couple times a week? How does that work?
Yeah, so we actually have a rotating schedule, perhaps a little similar to Jeff's, but we have Monday, Wednesday, and Friday that our students have built in for Leader in Me. We have teachers who push into, all of our elective teachers push into a classroom, and that allows our core teachers and teams to meet for 30 minutes just to kind of have a touch point on students and concerns on their team, things like that. The other 2 days a week are very specific to SEL curriculum. We're also a ruler school, so teachers for that extended time, it's our 4th hour, are giving students lessons, kind of incorporating those things along the way. We technically call it like a homeroom period.
Awesome. Great. So maybe before we log off today, I know that many of you are, doing some activities with your kids and doing some fun things for the holidays and just kind of, keeping kids motivated going into the break. So I'm wondering if anyone has something fun or different that they could just quickly share what that looks like.
I'll share.
Oh, go ahead, Haley.
So I put one of the things, we do a holiday spirit week. I don't think that's unusual to most of schools, but one of the things that we started this year, which I'm really looking forward to, is door decorations. So our kids in their homeroom classes are kind of developing that and creating their own little scene on their doors, which has been pretty cool to watch the transformation of. Yeah.
Oh, and that's an easy, fun one. I know even at the elementary level, that's always an easy, fun thing to do. And kids definitely, they love competition of any kind, right? So that ends up being fun. Do you have like a winning door get something?
We do. Yeah. So they'll get a treat, and that's, yeah. And like you said, middle schoolers specifically, well, high schoolers too, but are motivated by any kind of treat, candy, food. So yeah.
Fun. All right. Anyone else have one to share before we close out together?
Wendy, I have one. We do at North Middle School Coco and Carols. So on Thursday this week, our choir and our orchestra join forces, and in our commons, they just have kind of an informal jam session where they're doing Christmas carols. We invite teachers down to bring their classes, and our web leaders and student leaders serve them hot cocoa. Just kind of a fun way to wrap up the week.
That's awesome. Great. I don't know. I'm sure a lot of you hopefully follow MASSP on social media and on Twitter and on Facebook this weekend. We just launched esports as an association during COVID. And I'm sure, do any of you have gaming classes for kids or gaming clubs for kids? This is like obviously a huge thing for them. So anyway, we launched esports and Ryan is now in charge of it. And he did a phenomenal job this past weekend. Just want to brag up Ryan a little bit. On Saturday, we had our esports state finals for League of Legends, Super Smash Brothers, and what's the other one?
Rocket League.
Rocket League. I love Rocket League. That's my favorite of the games. But this was the first time that we did it in person, and we did it at Eastern Michigan, and the kids were able to actually compete on a stage with big screens where we could watch the action. And the company that we work with for this is called Play Versus, and they actually had what they call a shoutcaster moderating the game. And I mean, I'm telling you, I'm not a gamer. I'm not usually like that interested in these things, but it was a super, super fun event. And one of the things that I thought was really neat about, well, many things I think are neat about esports, but one is just involves such a different cross section of kids. Like, I mean, these are kids that maybe probably wouldn't be involved in other school activities. So for them to like wear a school jersey and get a medal and get a trophy, it was like really, I could tell they were very touched by the fact that they were being really elevated for something that's their skill set. And something that happened germanely, we didn't even invite, but we had Oakland University and Grand Valley show up at Eastern scouting for their college teams, because these colleges and universities are actually building arenas now for esports. This is like $1 billion industry. I mean, it's just going to boom. So it's crazy. But I mentioned this to you, even though this is currently a high school thing, because we are looking to develop this into a middle school league as well. So if you're just starting like a gaming club, just know this is on the horizon. And Ryan, I don't know if they've given us a timeline for this, or if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, we're trying for next year. That's what we're trying to do. I know right now, if you have like maybe with 8th graders, it's that 13-year-old range is kind of like the magic number that they have right now where they could participate. So it would probably be a cross section of your 8th graders. We're trying to see if we can get that age lowered so we can be, start doing feeder programs from middle school, just like you would with your varsity level, with your upperclassmen at high school, have a JV, have middle school programs as well. So that's the plan. Our goal is to do that next fall, but we'll know more come this spring. But it is possible with 13-year-olds. So if you're interested in that with your 8th graders, let me know and we can chat.
So we're super excited about this. Moving into second semester, we're hoping that we have even more teams engaged and that we continue to grow it in our state. We're watching kind of what happens in other states with esports. And in Georgia right now, about 60% of the high schools are in the esports league. So we're really hoping that at some point in time, it grows to that extent. If kids are doing this at home, why not engage them in a positive way, and make them part of the school community for it. So we're excited about that. And I just wanted to share that was kind of a bright spot. Like all of you look, nowadays, especially with things being as stressful as they are, you look forward to your weekends for your downtime. But I do have to say it was a bucket filler to be with these kids this past Saturday and to see this event take off, and Ryan really to do an awesome job of, you can imagine the technology arrangements alone for something like that. And then there was this windstorm, right? So I'm coming into Eastern Michigan University and stopped at a diner for breakfast, and there was no power. And I thought, oh my gosh, we're doing this giant esports event, and if there's no power, it'll be a disaster. But luckily that all worked out, and we were overcome just some of the glitches, that anybody would encounter during the first time they do a major event like that. The last thing I want to mention before we log off today is that MASSP is in the process of planning a huge Women in Leadership conference. And the thing that's going to be different about this that we're super stoked about is that we're planning it right now, and it's going to be this coming November. So we basically have, almost a full year to plan this thing, but it's going to be at in Grand Rapids. We're not going to need to use the DeVos Center, but we'll be using the Amway Grand as our main place. And we're expecting to sell this thing out with 600 to 800 attendees. And it's going to be, women leaders in their buildings, bring 5 or 6 kids with them. And it will be an overnight, but we'll have activities planned, and keep the kids busy and engaged at night. So it'll probably be kind of like show up on a Sunday at 1 p.m. and then, conclude on Monday, probably at like 3 or 4 o'clock. So we just started the planning phase of this, but I just wanted to give you a heads up about it. We're really excited about it. And we'd love for it to be a middle school, high school event. So more info to come on that one. If you're looking for something like that, I think it'll just be really, really like a fun thing to do. And I wanted to just plant the seed with you too, because I know budgets sometimes get planned, really far in advance to give you an idea to think about that. So we appreciate everyone's time. And I really, really hope that you really have the opportunity to decompress and log out this over the holiday break. I mean, I know we keep saying this is unprecedented times, and I felt that way, prior to the Oxford tragedy, but I'm sure like me, that has just added a whole nother layer of stress to the field and to everyone. And, I just hope all of you get that downtime over the break. You've been awesome. And it's super fun to just be able to connect with you every month like this. So Ryan and I will look forward to seeing you again in January.